Welcome into episode number 4 of the Boys Collective on 105.3 The Fan with KG and Broaddus. My name is Kevin Gray, alongside Super Bowl winning scout at 1/4 of the G-Bag Nation, Bryan Broaddus. Bryan, good to see you on this Wednesday. How we doing?
Doing well, KG. Getting ready for a big week of football with your Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots. Not a very common opponent, and the Cowboys don't have a great history of recent success against this team. So something needs to be figured out here this week as we get ready to make that trip to Foxborough.
Cowboys looking to win their 5th straight game as they visit the New England Patriots on Sunday afternoon. You can find this on 105.3 The Fan on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel for 105.3 The Fan. Make sure you also hit the notifications button there so you know when the episodes drop. This is also on 105.3thefan.com, all of our social platforms, and you can check it out there. We appreciate all the response that everyone continues to show for this particular show, and we appreciate the opportunity to do it with you a few times a week here. So this is our Wednesday show where we kind of get into Cowboys news and notes, some different things that we've noticed for the last couple of days for this team. And then on our Friday show, we'll get into our full preview of the Cowboys when they take on the Patriots. We'll sprinkle in a little Cowboys Patriots talk as the show goes on. But let's jump early into the Broaddus Files here. Obviously, some news being made for the Cowboys over the last couple of days. We'll start with La'el Collins. La'el Collins' suit has been denied, and he will finish out his 5-game suspension, the 5th game of that suspension being this week against the New England Patriots. He will be available after that, and his first game back will be against the Minnesota Vikings on Halloween night. So for Collins, here's a couple of things. One, this was more, and you've talked about this plenty, Broaddus, that this was more about trying to save some of that money that he potentially is going to be losing as a result of being suspended for the 5 games, because there was no realistic thought that he was actually going to play or be made eligible to play once all of this went down. And the way that the judge looked at it was that, hey, you basically brought this to us too late. And honestly, we can't not enforce something that we may feel is a little shady based on what the NFL has done, but we have to uphold what the arbitrator has decided. Is that kind of what you've understood based on what has been decided here?
Yeah, I think so, KG. To me, this was more about La'el Collins, trying to get back some money that he lost through the suspension, and as you mentioned, also for future earnings. When you start talking about guarantees, clauses are built into contracts for off the field stuff, for suspensions, especially if you have a player that has a history of off the field problems. And Collins has had his share of things that have happened to him along the way that that the team was like, hey, we're going to protect ourselves in this way. If something does happen, we don't want to be on the hook for this entire contract. So yeah, I can understand Collins wanting to fight to make sure that those guarantees are covered going forward, because in this day and age, what we've learned from guys like Jalen Smith, when you do have guarantees or things that teams have to address from year to year, and it's a high dollar amount, they're going to take that very seriously. And anything that leads them to believe that they can move on or continue a relationship, well, they're surely going to address that.
So for Collins, this is more now about getting back on the field once he's available against the Patriots, and a continuation for Terrence Steele, who, give him his credit, has done admirably instead of Terrence Steele here. So it's interesting now that he'll have the opportunity to finish out, obviously, these 5 games, and then Collins coming back. I think for me, it's interesting how Collins will be looked at going forward by this organization, given some of the things, whether it be self-inflicted with the suspension itself or dealing with injuries, the, potentially coming out of, not coming in shape to camp last year, having the hip surgery, the view of this organization of Collins going forward. I don't see a situation where he will be released by this team, but at the same time, I'm sure there are questions now based on what has happened over the last year plus now about, one, his availability, but 2, his consistency in terms of the off the field stuff, to make sure that he's not not being available, if you will, going forward for this team.
Yeah, he came in camp in tremendous shape. On the G-Bag Nation, we had a chance to interview him in Oxnard. Physically looked good, but you're absolutely right, KG. Last year, he was, if you remember some of the OTAs and things like that, I remember the first practice he was OTAs. He looked poor physically. He looked like he'd put on a ton of weight. He looked like a player that very much thought that the NFL was not going to play a season because of COVID. And he just let himself go. And then he practices the one time, he gets through the practice, and all of a sudden, well, I've got a hip problem. It just a lot of bad timing for Lyle Collins. You kind of felt like that maybe things were going to turn around for him, when he came into camp, and how he was able to get himself back in shape. But yeah, now going forward, there are those questions. There's like, okay, is there a way that, with the way Terrence Steele has played, and let's be honest here, this Cowboys, I always call it the administration, this current administration and Mike McCarthy, they've done an outstanding job of not exposing Terrence Steele to any of his weaknesses. They're not asking him to block 65 or 70 plays one-on-one with defensive ends or linebackers. They're giving him help along the way. They're putting players to his side. Zach Martin has helped him along the way. He's made him more comfortable in the way he's played. But those one-on-one blocks where he has to try and drive somebody off the ball are really few and far between. If you look at how the Cowboys ran the ball last week against the Giants, they obviously felt that they could run the ball at Bradbury on the corner, and he was not going to come up and force. With no Jabril Peppers in the game as a forced safety. Nobody in the alley that was going to come downhill and make a play there. So they ran the ball to his side. But what did they do? They blocked him down. They angle blocked. And so it's a lot easier to run the ball outside if you can angle block at the point. That way the guy either is going to go up the field and the ball is going to go around, but you don't have to physically drive the man off the ball. You can get in the way. You can screen. You could shield. You can position your body in order to keep that defender from getting to the outside. And they did a great job of that. And so I applaud this current administration for not exposing him and allowing him to do things that he's capable of doing. And by doing this, they're on a 4-game winning streak right now with the possibility of going to New England, making it 5 in a row. I don't think there's any Cowboy fans out there when the suspension hit, when we heard the news, that believed this team was going to win 5 straight games with Terrence Steele playing right tackle.
No, agreed, because I think a lot of the concern for Terrence Steele was his inability potentially to deal with not only folks, in the passing game as far as, blitzing or regular pass protection. It was just more so based on what we saw from him last year and really his inability to be a consistent player at that right tackle position. Good for him that he's been able to build himself in this way. Give credit to Joe Philbin and this offensive line, coach, to be able to get him and still remain confident in him to be able to be in this position to where, look, folks may get a little over their skis when it comes to when it comes to Steele. Well, maybe Collins becomes somewhat expendable. Let's pump the brakes on the idea of Collins being expendable. Terrence Steele, I think what he's done is proven himself to be a capable swing tackle that provides depth now, to where once Collins comes back, you feel a lot better that if Collins does go down with some kind of injury, you'll be okay there actually now.
Yeah, I have absolutely no confidence in Ty Nsekhe as the swing tackle right now. I do have some confidence in Terrence Steele as long as they do things that he's capable of doing, as long as they help him along the way. I know for a fact, though, a lot of people over there were telling me that, listen, this kid's the first one in the meeting. He's the last one to leave. He wants to get better. He wants to be coached. He works hard in the weight room. Have we seen the physical, body changing type things from him? No. Is he a stronger player? Yeah, probably a little bit more. And, but he's probably a little bit more experienced too. And I think that's helped him in these last 4 games.
Other notes here, help could be coming on the way for the Dallas Cowboys. Kelvin Joseph, who's been on the IR due to a growing, Donovan Wilson, who's also been on the missing the past 4 games with a groin injury also, were limited participants in practice as we're recording this on Wednesday. The team had to work inside but due to the rainy conditions and those kinds of things. So it sounds like help could be on the way on the defensive side of the ball, and particularly for Kelvin Joseph, because part of what I thought for this draft for this Cowboys this year was that this draft really hinged on the success of Micah Parsons and Kelvin Joseph, not knowing that these other guys, Osa Digizua, Golston, and others, would have the impacts that they've had so far. But for Joseph, this is going to be a real opportunity for him as he gets ready to come back to really prove to everyone that he was worth the second round selection, especially given what his, opposite running mate is doing right now, with Trevon Diggs and the way that he's performed so far.
Yeah, KG, this, it's funny, you talk to people at LSU, you talk to people at Kentucky, they were always never questioned the ability of Kelvin Joseph, but the questions about him was he has other interests. He's a performer. He does a great job as a performer. If you've ever seen him, not that I'm a guy that I can grade. I can grade.
I feel players. Like you could drop some bars, Broaddus, if you really wanted to.
I could grade players. I can't grade musical performers, but talking to people, he's a very talented individual in that way. And there were times where people would say he would go away for 4 or 5 days, and we didn't know where he was, and that kind of thing. And man, as a guy in a front office or working in a college staff, I would be like, wow, that's. I don't know where my guy is for 4 or 5 days. So there were those kinds of questions. It wasn't so much about the ability. He hadn't played a lot of football. He didn't play a lot of football at LSU. He didn't play a lot of football at Kentucky. And then he gets Dan Quinn, who went around the country. Mike McCarthy went to Lexington, Kentucky. If you follow what's going on with Kentucky right now in football, they've got a really good program over there. And, they're building things the right way. And he was a part of that. And, so to me, this is more about, can he stay healthy? He was in terrible shape in the rookie mini camp because of all the things I talked about. He got in the OTAs. He made some improvement along the way because he kind of put himself into that mode of, okay, I've got to get ready for this, for these practices. And then the 5 weeks to 6 weeks between OTAs and training camp, he came in camp ready to go. And then he gets hurt in training camp. He gets a hamstring soreness. And so he's missing practices there. He makes a play in the Texans game, the final game of the Jacksonville game.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a play in that game, and then boom, he's hurt. So now you're starting to look at reliability questions there. And to the Cowboys' credit, they've been really fortunate. Anthony Brown has played very, very well the last 3 weeks. Jordan Lewis hasn't been exposed yet. As far as any problems they might have there. And then we all know about what's going on with Diggs. Mm-hmm. So they haven't really had to have Kelvin Joseph step in yet. But, yeah, I mean, here we are, getting ready, likely, for, like I say, for him working back into practice, it's going to be Minnesota week, and then you're going to play, you've played, you're 7 weeks into the season now. Can he help you these last 10 weeks, and can he help you into the playoffs? That's going to be the questions. He hasn't shown reliability so far, and it's hard to play with players that it's like this, just a conversation we had with Lyle Collins. The reliability issues are there. Are we going to, if you have issues off the field or medically, then we really can't count on you to be there when we really need you to be there.
Speaking of those corners, as we kind of move to our scouts view here, Trevon Diggs has become the toast of the town for the Dallas Cowboys. My man is on SportsCenter making appearances. He's getting a lot of the national love that I think he rightfully deserves. A guy who's got 6 interceptions in his first 5 games and has really put himself in position to be considered one of the best corners through the first 5 weeks of this season. I think for me now, the question is, and he's talked about this, the game has slowed down for him. He's really taken the opportunities that he missed out on last year to try and really make plays on the ball. And he feels like every ball is his, which I think for a corner is a tremendous mentality to have. I think now the question starts to arise is, 1, can he possibly keep this up? And 2, once teams, if they decide to start throwing away from him, how does he now adjust to what teams will do to him? Because we've seen now he's clearly made adjustments to what teams he wants to do to against other receivers to make himself in position to get these kinds of interceptions. For you, what have you seen in terms of the differences in his game that's really allowed him to emerge to be kind of the interception machine that he's turned into at this point.
Yeah, someone on Twitter this morning asked me about he was sick that people were comparing him to Deion Sanders. And I'm like, well, there's some traits that the kid has that are actually Deion Sanders-like. And the one thing that I always notice about corners is his ability to finish. Interceptions with the ability to finish. He puts himself in position to finish. He's not going to allow you to run away from him. He's going to have a collision at the line. He's going to be able to carry the receiver, put himself in position. He does a great job of playing with his eyes. He knows how to read routes. He understands when you break inside on him, how to undercut the route and stay in position. We saw that last week when Kenny Golladay tried to run. I thought it was one of the most, the interception he made was an impressive play. But the route that he carried during that game with Golladay underneath and able to break the ball, almost got his first interception of the game. And on that particular play, that's just route recognition, that's positioning, and that's finish. Finish in the way of knocking the ball down. Finish would have been getting the interception. But Sanders, the difference between him and Sanders is, I think that with Diggs, he has got to play up on you, and there has to be a collision because he doesn't have Sanders' speed. This kid does play with a burst. You can see him close when the ball is in the air. You can see that little bit of that makeup speed there. So he's not going to run a 4.2 or like Sanders is. He's just not going to play that way. With Sanders, you saw really a twitchy guy, and I mean twitchy that you could play off, and then you can see the route, and then you could with your feet you could adjust quickly to break inside or turn and carry. That's when you think about twitchy as quickness. I don't think Diggs is quickness. I think Diggs is length. I think he's power, and I think he's positioning. And I think those are the things that he wants to play a physical side of the game. Sanders, on the other hand, wants to beat you with athletic ability and his ability to be quick and twitchy and those kinds of things. So, yeah, that's to your point asking about will teams throw, he's traveling with your best. So if you're an offensive coordinator and you're not going to throw the ball to your best receiver, then give the Cowboys a win for taking your best receiver. And the NFL now is about throwing the football. And if all of a sudden we're not throwing the ball to our best receiver on a down in and down out basis, then Diggs has completely done his job. And what I think is going to happen is maybe Diggs they'll mix things up a little bit. That you're going to carry for this series, you're going to carry this guy. Next series, you're going to carry this guy. Next series, you're going to carry, and just kind of mix things back and forth so he doesn't get that. So opponents don't have a bead on really where he's at or who he's going to cover. If they know that they're always going to take their best, he's going to cover your best receiver. Some offensive coordinators are going to scheme ways to get that guy open, whether like they did last week. They tried to run him through trash, and he's got that awareness to play through trash and not let the crossers and pickers get him in that way. So really, really smart player, though, but he's going to be a guy that offensive coordinators clearly are going to have to account for. But Dan Quinn's answers could be, I'm going to mix up who he covers. Maybe he's going to carry your best guy for 2 series. Maybe the next series he's going to carry your second best guy and just kind of work that way and not get a feel of where he's going to play during these games.
Just some numbers behind some of the dominance of Trevon Diggs, especially on Sunday against the Giants. -4.2 expected points added when he was out covering and with the receivers that he was traveling with. He's like, Kevin, all these numbers, get this. That's pretty darn good when you got a negative expected points added, for a corner who's put himself. Look, you could say at times he has gambled and has lost at times because there have been some big plays made on him. But I think one of the best traits of his is that he has amnesia when it comes to big plays made against him. He forgets about them, moves on, and he's ready to make the next play when it comes his way.
Yeah, KG, the thing about it is now got exposed a little bit having to cover Tony, and Tony
the speed guys, it seems like he's had some trouble with.
This is where we talk about twitchy and quick. When you watch Tony from the Giants play, that is a 5'11", almost like a running back size guy but is really explosive in the way he moves. And so if Diggs has to match that type of player, it's a little bit rougher on him. He's
DJ Moore was kind of the same way in the Carolina game.
Yeah, he's good with Mike Evans, Galladay, Keenan Allen, those big receivers that catch the ball, contested players, but maybe not as quick-footed as what he saw from Tony last week. That's a little bit of a trouble for him to have to do that.
Which is interesting because one of the best opponents that they still have on their schedule features a guy who's like that in Tyreek Hill in Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see if he's traveling with him that day in that matchup when they do play each other a little bit later on this year, which kind of leads me now to, so this defense has gotten a lot of praise. I was going through some numbers today, and it's interesting because I know how much Krusty loves his numbers. No, not really. I'm just joking.
I don't love numbers at all. Height, weight, speed. Give me the 3-cone. Give me the short shuttle.
Yeah.
Give me a couple of things. But when you start talking about numbers, Krusty's brain doesn't always compute. Yeah.
Well, you'll like this one because for DVOA, that's become one of the standard numbers that when we look at teams in terms of production, accounting for opponent, accounting for a situation, we kind of look at DVOA as one of those measuring sticks. Offensively, we knew the Cowboys were going to be pretty good this year. I don't think we thought through 5 weeks that this team was going to be 6th in the NFL in defensive DVOA, which is kind of wild to think about given what this defense was last year relative to its personnel and, yes, Mike Nolan, its defensive coordinator, to really the complete turnaround that this team has undergone defensively. This is a team that's also 5th in the NFL in terms of rushing yards per game allowed. Is this a real turnaround, or has there been some smoke and mirrors that Dan Quinn's been able to employ a little bit to maybe mask some of this, maybe put some deodorant on some stuff to kind of keep some of the things, hidden here? Is this a real turnaround in your mind through 5 games of what we've seen?
Yeah, KG, before you and I started doing this show on 105.3, I was that's where I was with Gavin Dawson and Jeff Kavanaugh. That's in Lucius Alexander. That's where I was going. I was saying Dan Quinn's going to have to smoke and mirrors this thing until he figures out who can play and who can't play. He's figured out that Micah Parsons has a couple of different roles. He's figured out that Osa Odighizuwa's got a couple of roles. He's figured out that, Anthony Brown is not a bad corner when it comes to, being opposite a guy that's, is not as twitchy but can still take your guy out of the game. He's figured out that, hey, the safeties that, one of the guys was with me in Atlanta. He goes, we went to the dollar store and got all these safeties. They're all making plays for him. So what Dan's figured out is that, initially he was going to have to do some kind of maybe some unorthodox things in order to generate pass rush or to get off the field. And, they've had their share of issues. I mean, they gave up an 88-yard drive the other day. I mean, they Mike McCarthy declined a penalty to make it 3rd and 12, and they gave up a big play on that one that resulted in some points. They still have some issues, but what's happened along the way is their offense has done a great job of taking the ball and building leads and making teams very one-dimensional, having to throw the ball. And if they can find a way if they continue to get turnovers that way with Diggs or Brown or whoever, they can get some fumbles, that those yards and stuff won't matter. It's just, can you hang on with when the offense stakes you to a 14-point lead or stakes you to a 17-point lead or a 21-point lead? Can you do enough to get off the field 2 or 3 extra times in the second half to make this the game difference to where the Cowboys can turn around and then do what they did in the early 90s with Emmitt Smith, hand the ball to Pollard, hand the ball to Elliott, and just grind the game out like they need to.
This team is still 2nd in the NFL in terms of takeaways. They're 2nd in the NFL in terms of turnover differential. I think the conversation now, has to start to move to, okay, we feel like this team is going to make the playoffs. The way that you look at their schedule lends itself to think this team is going to win 10, 11 games or more this season. Now the question is, can this defense be counted upon when you start adjusting for better opponents. If the season were to end today, this is a team that would take on the Carolina Panthers. If things broke correctly, they would face Tom Brady in the divisional round of this year's playoffs. So now we're starting to talk about better and better quarterbacks and teams as we go on. Do you get the sense, Brian, that this team defensively can get better enough as this season goes on to realistically give folks the idea that when things are going to be counted upon most for this defense, that they can make plays? Or is it something that, hey, regular season wise, schedule broke right, they got some good favorable opponents, they've been able to make some things happen? Do you see this as a potential championship defense as things go on with this season for this team?
Yeah, the thing, I mean, and both these games were very early in the season. When you look at Tampa and you look at the Chargers, you know, and to me, those are two elite quarterbacks. You can say what you want about that kid. You know, I know he doesn't have the championships and playoff wins and all that, but that kid at the Chargers is legit.
Yeah, Herbert's a baller.
Yeah, he's a baller. And you watch every week of what he does. So, you know, yeah, I think that there's going to be some matchups that they're going to have to deal with. The Mahomes one will be really, really interesting. That could be a very good litmus test to see, you know, because to win this conference, you know, I'd like to believe that they're going to find a way to win this division. I really, really do. I think we all do. But what's interesting is, can they find a way to beat Brady? Can they find a way to beat Rodgers? Those are the matchups that you're going to probably have to deal with. You know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in Week 16 when they deal with Kyler Murray. That very well could be a very pivotal game, and where seeding happens. You know, if we're looking ahead, you know, if all things play out where health remains tame for everybody, yeah, it's going to be about, you know, can they control a guy like Kyler Murray? Can they, you know, I think at Minnesota, you look at Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins doesn't have a great winning percentage against the Cowboys, but Kirk Cousins has always found a way to throw for like 400 yards against them. You know, so, but that's where it's going to come down to. I thought from the season, if the Cowboys were going to get to the Super Bowl or have any type of success this year, they were going to have to beat Brady twice. And they got enough turnovers to do it. They played well enough offensively. They just could not get special teams to play in their favor that game. And so if they had that happen, then, you know, maybe we'd be talking a different story right now. But to your point, I'd like to believe this defense is getting better, because I think what happened is the young guys are starting to get more experience. Parsons, Osa, Golston. These guys are, and then, you know, you'll get back Tank Lawrence. You'll get back Neville Gallimore. You know, you'll get back Wilson. I mean, Gallimore, Wilson, I'm kind of thinking like they're going to have to be part of a rotation. I'm not saying plug and play, let's go. The guys ahead of them have done a really, really nice job. But I think Dan Quinn and the staff, it's starting George Edwards and Joe Witt and all these guys on the staff are getting a real feel for what they can and cannot do. And I don't see Dan Quinn just banging his head against the wall and saying, well, we're just got to keep playing this. If it's not working, I could see them throwing stuff out and then trying stuff different as they get some more players back.
There's a stretch of games in November 14th, 21st, and 25th. In successive weeks, they play Matt Ryan, the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, and then Derek Carr with the Vegas Raiders. I know things are kind of free falling with the Raiders right now, but those are three really, really good quarterbacks. And I think those stretch of games are going to tell me a lot about whether or not this team from a championship aspiration can really play against some of the elite quarterbacks. You know, you can feel how you feel about Derek Carr or whatever the case may be, but Matt Ryan's a Super Bowl quarterback. Patrick Mahomes as well, you know, Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's going to tell us a lot about this defense in that November stretch there on whether or not we can realistically project this team being one that could actually win in the playoffs this year. Right. So
yeah, totally agree. That's it's going to be a good run. And like you said, and you know, with Carr, that's going to be on a short week coming after playing Kansas City. I mean, there's
that's on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah.
Your defense could be like kind of reeling a little bit from playing against Mahomes and then turning around and having to face Carr in a short week with some of the weapons they have there in Vegas.
Well, that concludes episode number 4 of the Boys Collective here on 105.3 The Fan. Obviously, it is another week for the Cowboys as they get ready to face Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. It's funny because this is a team that likes to play a lot of man coverage. And in fact, it's one of the top teams in the NFL that likes to play man coverage, as far as their defense is concerned. I have a real interesting feeling when we do Friday show. Bill Belichick may switch some things up a little bit just to give us a little different wrinkle, but we'll definitely preview that on Wednesday.
Yeah, KG, I've already looked at the Patriots and Friday's show. Make sure you tune in because I'll have some interesting thoughts there for sure.
Okay. Looking forward to that. Well, you can find this on 105.3 The Fan on YouTube. You can also find it on 105.3thefan.com, all of our social media platforms. And on Friday's show, it will be Cowboys Patriots preview. Get you ready for the Cowboys visiting the New England Patriots, as Brian pointed out on Monday, looking for their first win in New England since your boy was 1 year old. That's how long it's been since the Cowboys have gone to New England and actually gotten the win there. Brian, appreciate the time as always and looking forward to Friday's show. And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great, KG. Yeah, thank you, man.
Appreciate it.